All right, welcome back to the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast, the number one concrete podcast, no matter what any online people try to tell you. We're here to tell you it's number one. And to prove it, we've got the great and powerful Justin Lazenby from Thomas Concrete. How are you, man?
Doing great, doing great. Like I told you guys a little bit ago, thought I was going to get on the Rogan show before I got to get on here.
I'm actually glad you said that on air so people realize that we've known you for what, 12, 13 years now?
It's been a while. It's been a while. It's been a good relationship, good friends, and hopefully we can continue that going and do more to.
Yeah, you have the great conversation. For anybody that didn't hear when you were on last time, you were on here for like a whopping 10 minutes last October, which we appreciate. And during that time, we did tell the story, and it still is remarkable to me. You're the only person whose lab I've ever walked into, and you already had Acti-Gel on your shelf. And it's more amazing because you were like one of the first people I ever tried to tell about it because I was living in Atlanta, you were in Atlanta, and we had just gotten started. So the fact that you even had the product was mind blowing because we hadn't even told anybody.
Someone had put that in a trade journal. I forget which one it was, and I saw an ad for Acti-Gel, and I'm like, hey, what's this stuff? Let's make a phone call. Let's see what it's about. And us, we get something in there. We're going to put it through its paces, see what it's capable of. And the interesting part was, I think we looked at it for a lot of things that to begin with probably were not what the product was intended for, but I think we found a few little interesting tidbits there where it can help and do some things that hopefully helped you guys out along the way too.
Absolutely. Y'all were great to us from the very beginning. And so that trade journal was a mining journal and it was talking about shotcrete. And that was what you originally grabbed it for. And then you end up saying, oh, did you realize that you could make SEC concrete with this? And did you realize like form pressures were way less? And did you realize this? And you realize that? And you had like 10 different things you tried and you were beyond us, which is
Yeah.
it's a little bit embarrassing when you show up as the vendor and your customer knows more about your product than you do.
One of the best ones for that was is I don't even know if you guys knew this part of it, but we actually built a wall form inside of our lab to where we were trying to test to make a mix that hopefully didn't need to be vibrated or any of that. And, a couple of other admixture companies had products out at the time that were supposed to eliminate bug holes and do all this magical stuff, and we didn't feel like they really did that. So we built a wall form, had 4 panels in it. It was like, hey, what do we put in the fourth panel? We had their product, the control mix, and a different product that was supposedly going to help from another company. We're like, hey, let's try Acti-Gel in there. And the Acti-Gel one was the best looking of the four, even though that really wasn't what it was intended for. But man, it made a great looking panel. And that panel may still be floating around my lab somewhere. But when I had people walking in and out of the lab and there's a wall form set up in there, they're looking at us like we're crazy. And watching us try to get concrete into it was probably pretty comical too, but it was fun.
The form that got everybody looking in our lab, like what is that? Was we had the anti-washout column built in our lab, and that really freaked people out.
Yeah, yeah, those are fun. We did one back in I guess 2002, 2003. It's called polycarboxyls were really hitting the market and everybody was looking at the SEC and everything there. We did a demo at a plant where we actually built a form out of um, plexiglass so that everyone could see kind of how this concrete reacted, how it looked in there, and that was pretty exciting, because it was the ultimate the ultimate chance to really screw up and it not work. But luckily it did in those early days. But that was pretty cool. It's probably something that I'm surprised you haven't seen more of because I mean that visual is actually pretty impressive to see concrete going into a form and seeing how it acts and moves and all that's pretty cool actually.
There is one that I've seen that was like that, and it was for grout fill. Have you ever seen that one
Yep.
that's floating around? Yeah, I think it might belong to Argos, that video, but that was killer. They set up like a cinder block wall
There's
and cut it in half, and then you could see the grout fill going through it. It was killer.
another one that's pretty good. I don't know if you've seen it, but another friend of ours, Paul Ramsberg, he's got a video where he actually had concrete fill in around a GoPro, which was pretty interesting to see until everything went black. But it was one of those areas like Paul, that's a pretty expensive piece of equipment to throw in a form here. But Paul's a concrete guy like us, so he wanted to capture that one of a kind shot. He definitely did it with it.
Yeah, we had him on just recently. I think that was Joey Bell's favorite
Oh, yeah,
episode we ever did.
Man,
that was
that's
so awesome. The history of concrete. I think we could have had like a 4-hour episode if we really wanted to, or we could have at least broken it up. But that was one of my favorite episodes without a doubt.
It is. We've used Paul a lot for that with the local GRMCA and everything to do a day of concrete type deal or whatever. It's like, hey, Paul's going to give you the history of concrete, and then we're like, hey, okay, Paul, you've got 60 minutes. Here's what you've got. You got to make this work. And every time there's something different. I mean, the last when he did the show with you guys and everything, I was like, Paul, where are you getting this stuff from? I mean, this stuff's amazing. This is stuff I had no clue over. I was out of town for a few days and came back and had four books laying on my desk where he had gotten that he had read. And I mean, I was like, I've never known there were books about concrete out there, but hey, it's the first time to learn anything. So there's that. Paul's a great resource with that stuff.
The Georgia Ready Mix Concrete Association, y'all just had y'all's meeting just the other day, right?
Yep, we had our annual convention, I guess, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. Great event, breath of fresh air, getting a guy like Bill Benzer, who's been in the industry a long time, kind of back into the industry. He kind of retired prematurely, I think. I think he was ready to retire, but maybe not completely ready to retire. So when the board coaxed him back to the association, really good get, and kind of changed the dynamic of our association. We had become a little more on the lobbying side, kind of had been kind of a bigger push, and he brought back the committees and really having it more concrete centered, more concrete focused. And they still do some of those things on the side there, but really pushing it. Got some good, healthy committees. We got a technical committee that I chair. Joseph Hart with Wayne Davis actually does a environmental health and safety one. Then we've got a workforce development committee now. We're starting a CDP committee. We may be the first that have done that. We're going to bring in concrete delivery professionals from across the area and kind of, hey, what's on your mind? How can we help you? What are the challenges you face every day, and how do we make that better? And then we think that'll be a real good insight for the industry to really see what those guys are doing and what they're fighting every day.
That's cool. Oh yeah, that's real interesting. Yeah, they don't really have a seat at the table.
No, no, and they're so big in what we do. I mean, they're the most important piece of the puzzle a lot of days. I mean, they're sales because they're out there with your customer, and they're technical services because they see the concrete, and they're definitely get connected to the operation side. But man, they're a huge piece of the puzzle, and some of the giants in this industry that are really big people and really big places now. A lot of them started driving a truck. Our new CEO Ryan Chandley, that was the first thing he did in the industry was he drove a concrete truck. I mean, those things are just so invaluable to learn and see what you can do there.
Actually, you make a really good point. I hadn't always put it together, but they're the most front-facing, forward-facing person in the company that actually faces your clients. Because your clients really you're serving the owners that are trying to build the building, but really your clients are like the finishers. They choose who they want to buy that mud from, and they'll give you a hard time if they want to.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so they're front-facing to those. Man, I didn't even think about that.
That
Mm-hmm.
guy at the end of the chute's pretty invaluable piece of that puzzle. I mean, if we don't have him if he's not happy, usually no one's happy.
How much leeway do you give the drivers to mess with the mud? Like some jobs have tickets and say that hey you can only add a gallon of water. You better not mess this up, But how much leeway if they see something just ain't right? They got freedom to do anything. If yes, do you train them? If not, why not?
Yeah, I mean, our group, we kind of have a deal where anyone can hit pause. Our drivers definitely have that ability. If they see something it's not right, they'll call a timeout in a minute, go get a plant guy, get a quality guy, whoever, to come get in there and look at it with them. And man, they've been lifesavers over the years. I could tell you countless occasions where those guys, hey, this doesn't look right, and we go out there and okay, now we've got a problem that luckily our customers never know about because that driver called it. We don't catch all of them that way, but I mean, it's definitely great when you have that happen and they're able to help you find the situation before it becomes a whole lot bigger situation.
Do you use any of that like in transit monitoring stuff, like those hatch systems or whatever
Yeah,
like that?
yeah, we've toyed with we've got some of the smart hatch systems from Sidra. We've looked at the verify systems that Creso, Grace, GCP that they've had. And there's mixed success there. I think those things are going to become a part of everyday concrete. I think there's still a little bit of growth and a little bit of development there that needs to happen to make them a little more robust and get things.
Robust how in their data collection and analyzation, or
No, I
they're not lasting long enough? What do you mean?
no, I think they do a really good job of gathering the data, and there's a lot of data there. Some of them struggle at times with staying up. They just don't. Like any computer, they have things that go wrong there, and that becomes a little bit of a challenge. Others are better than that, and it seems like the systems that are more robust on the reporting side, that have all the reporting functions ready to go and are good, they struggle a little bit more on the truck
Hardware side.
element, and then the guys that are really good on the truck element necessarily don't have the good reporting functions yet. So somebody's going to get that figured out and have a really really robust system at some point, and we're excited to see it because I mean it's hard. It's hard to get drivers now, and we're all to blame for that. So, I've told this story a million times, but when it comes to drivers and the challenge of getting drivers, it's all on us because, you know, I'm not saying I want my kid to drive a concrete truck. I'm sure you guys are the same way, but 30 years ago, that was a really good profession. A guy took a lot of pride in that. Here he is driving a $100,000 piece of equipment back then. Those guys had a lot of pride in that, and they really, really liked it and wanted to do it. And it's kind of been a dynamic shift, and just, goes along with time. And people now don't look at that driver element as being as important as it is, but it's a really, really important thing to what we do, and something that we've got to get our arms wrapped around, because everyone can't be a sales guy or a quality guy. That's a really important piece that we've got to have, and we've got to figure out as an industry how to attract talent there. Because I remember drivers when I first started that were probably more knowledgeable about concrete than a lot of CEOs out there. I mean, they were super knowledgeable, and that's kind of gone away a little bit.
Well, they're one of the very few people in the company that see both ends of that delivery. They see everything going on at the yard, at the batch house, at the plant, and they see it when it comes out to shoot, how the crews are finishing it, how they're taking care of it, and they can be a liaison between the plant and the customer. There's very few people in the ready mix company that see both sides of that.
Yeah, they're a lifesaver. I mean, as a technician, used to, you had a complaint, that's who you went to. You went to your driver and said, "Hey, do you remember this load? Do you remember what went on there?" Or the paper tickets, and you looked at the back of it, and he had notes scribbled all over the back of it where he had seen them throwing water on it or adding a whole bunch of water or whatever. I mean, those guys are invaluable, and that's what scares me about those systems too, is that the easier we make that, the less we take off that driver, the less they're learning, the less they know. So they're kind of a double-edged sword. We need them because of where we're at, but they also can become a crutch to where we don't get our people the training and the ability to see what they need to see there.
Yeah, I was just about to say, training and experience can't beat either one of those. I don't know, what's a training program look like. Actually don't even know. What does a training program look like for a new concrete truck driver?
So it's going to vary everywhere. I mean, so we got to go two ways. We do our own in-house school as well. So with that school, they're going to spend weeks, months in that school to get their CDL. And then typically once they come out of there, most times they're going to spend at least a good eight weeks or so with a driver trainer, learning the ins and outs, trying to get them on different types of pours and everything. Of course, an experienced guy you probably don't do as long with, but you get them out there, you make sure they're seeing pump jobs, they're seeing curb jobs, jobs where they've got to hang chutes, get them into a central mix plant, into a dry batch plant. So there's a lot that goes in there, but it's a pretty robust deal. And I mean, the key there is we try to have those guys spend as much time as they can in the piece of equipment they're going to drive. It's a challenge. I mean, because when you need a driver, you need him. And that process for safety purposes, I mean, you've got to make sure you do it and do it right. And we've been pretty successful with that. I mean, once again, unsung heroes, the safety guys in the company that are kind of out there in the field, and then the driver trainers. Anyone around here knows it's never a lot of fun to ride with someone else. So riding with someone else that's learning to do something, and you've got 70,000 pounds, I mean, that's a game changer that I wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah, man, that's you just laid out, like, at best 4 months from the time you bring someone who's pretty green on to the time you might let them start running some sidewalk jobs. Do you share drivers among the plants, or do you have drivers that, like, these guys stick to the, city plant and these guys are in Lawrenceville, or or do y'all share drivers?
So I mean, yeah, every driver's assigned to a location, but yeah, they're all over town. I mean,
They're all over.
yeah, we're chasing work. So wherever the work is, a guy may be stationed in our Lawrenceville plant, but he may be running in our our Buckhead plant today, and then tomorrow he may be down in Stockbridge, and then the next day he may be up in Cartersville. I mean, that's the unique part about us. I mean, we're a huge trucking company. No one thinks about that, but when you've got
Mm-hmm.
close to 400 trucks on the road in Atlanta, pushing 800 to 1,000 across the southeast, there's a lot of pieces of equipment moving every day.
Yeah, I mean, actually like there's a concrete company up here in Philadelphia called Sylvie Concrete,
Mhm.
and during the wintertime it gets pretty cold and mud just slows down. It's just not pouring as much up here, and especially January, February, it gets pretty cold up here, and so they turn them all into snow plows. They put giant snow plows in the front, and they salt the roads, plow the roads. I don't think they salt them. They plow the roads with their ready mix trucks. That's killer. See a whole convoy of ready mix trucks out there staggered going down I-95 is pretty sick.
Joey, you and I'll have to have a discussion off air as to why he moved to the north. I'm not real sure.
I was up there for a few years, but I at least came back. I didn't even look in the mirror when I left that place up there.
Now the only I can't say that you don't have some valid points to question my sanity. The only thing I can tell you is I hadn't lost every marble in my brain. Still making sure to raise my daughter as a college football fan. Got a lot of roll tides here in this house. We're real excited for the upcoming season. So
Well,
raising them right.
Going,
Talking to a couple guys who probably hate Bama. So it's okay.
that's most people.
yeah.
Going back
used to-
to, go ahead,
They used,
Justin.
they used to have a really good coach. I'm not so sure anymore.
Yeah, but we
Still-
ain't sure either.
It's still up in the air. Going back to truck driver and recruiting, recruiting has been an issue, or it seems like it has for as long as we've been in the industry. It's always been an issue. And another issue has been retaining truck drivers. And when you got to talking about how much time and energy is invested in these drivers and the amount of money that it probably takes to train these drivers, I've always wondered, and of course you don't have to tell us, but I've always been curious, like how much does a company lose if a driver doesn't stick around for 6 months or something like that? Like at that time, have they recouped the cost, I wonder, or are they still in the hole until X amount of time?
Yeah, I don't know that anybody's ever really done the math on that. Would probably be scared to, but
Or I don't want to.
I would tell you that it's probably you probably need a good year and a half out of one to really get a good return on the investment there.
Mhm.
But I mean, it works. I mean, like we talked about us doing the school. Man, we've got so many pieces from that school. We've been doing the school for 18, 19, 20, probably 20 plus years now, and we've got pieces all over our company that came from that. So one of my top technical guys in Atlanta, Robert Wright, went through the truck driving school. And, now he's doing that. One of our head safety guys, DJ Sumlin, same thing, went through that school. I mean, there's pieces and success stories all throughout the company now with these guys. And it's really, really, really a cool thing. And I mean, you talked about the recruitment part. I mean, it's a huge change there. I mean, so I grew up in the industry because my dad was in the industry, and I'll never forget, like he got into the industry because his brother was in it. So his brother went and drove a concrete truck. So then my dad went and drove a concrete truck, and it's just kind of how things progressed. But now, man, you're having to do ads. There's people doing billboards. There's commercials on podcasts and everything. I mean, it's a completely different animal trying to pull those people in, and it's a strange, unique world to have to try to figure that out at times. I'm glad I'm not in HR.
Well, I mean, speaking of ads on concrete, if you'll Venmo me $100 real quick, you can feel free to ask for some drivers here on the ad 10 gallons concrete.
We always need drivers.
So, actually, Joey bringing up retention is what I was thinking as well, because when one of our buddies was running a plant in Baltimore, Maryland, and his number one problem he had was he couldn't retain his drivers. He'd get them in and get them, trained up, and then they'd just run off and do something else. And he felt like he was paying them pretty well, so he didn't think the pay was always necessarily the problem. I wondered about that because retention can be really tough in some of these jobs that are a little bit demanding. A truck driver might have to show up at the plant at pretty crazy hours, and you're working in some extreme heat in some cases, and you're going into, driving a big old truck in some very congested, hard to drive places, and sometimes you're getting yelled at for stuff that ain't your fault, and it can be a tough job. And along those lines, that can make retention a little bit tougher. Have you guys looked at any solutions? And one of our upcoming guests is actually going to be a guy that's like his whole thing, his whole company is just about retaining mostly drivers actually, but it could be anybody. We got a guy coming on to talk about that. I don't know if you guys have already looked into stuff or what you're doing to keep your drivers around.
Yeah, we're definitely always very cognizant of that. I mean, you've got to be competitive on pay. I mean, there's never any pay and benefits you got to be competitive with. Yeah, you've got a select few that are going to chase hours. You know, if they feel like they can go get more hours somewhere, they may run back and forth. But yeah, it's funny. I mean, we mentioned him earlier, Ryan Chandler, who's our new CEO, and then Alan Wessel, who was his predecessor. I mean, they created a great culture. You know, and Ryan, we had a meeting this morning. Ryan made a thing, hey, we're not going to be out cultured, and that's kind of a funny statement, but it's true. I mean, if you've got a really good culture and people enjoy coming to work and they want to be there every day, and it's a good place to work with good people around you, you'll see people typically stay. And I think that's one of the things that people forget and lose. I mean, a toxic plant guy can cost you more than you'll ever realize. I mean, so it's making sure you've got the right people in the right places to take care of business, but take care of the people too. And taking care of the people may be almost, if not more important at times than taking care of the customers, because they both go hand in hand.
It's interesting you say that because Thomas is a good company, but your quality department that, now you're at the top of it and everybody looks up to you, but back in the day, you were the workhorse in that room and, throwing up those mixes. But every time we would show up, like everybody was like so happy to be running whatever crazy mix design you dreamed up in whatever crazy form that you'd built, and we're gonna go test stuff. But everybody was always smiling. I don't know that I was ever there on a day where everybody looked doom and gloom in the Thomas quality department.
There's probably been those days, but they're fewer of those days than the good ones. I mean, that's it. I mean, I've been very, very fortunate in my career to work for, someone who was as good of a leader and as good of a person as John Cook was. I mean, you cannot ask for anybody that's any better to work for. I mean, just great, great, great human being. And it's like, hated to see him leave, hated to see him retire, but it's like I said when he did, hey, look, now I just get to have a good friend. It's a good mentor, but now it's also a good friend that I know I can call and kind of, bounce things off of, get information. And there's been some other, Thomas has been really fortunate to have a lot of dynamic leadership. Johnny Center, who was our first CEO. I mean, once again, different style of leader, different type of manager, but very strong and helped build a good base. And guys like him, Bill Davis, who's been with the company now for, I guess, going on 30 years, Scotty Center. I mean, just a lot of really good key pieces that have been with this company a really long time, and those things are good. And then the company recognized talent and brought in people from other places, and it's been a godsend. I mean, it's been a really good place to work. Everyone seems to care. I mean, you never feel like you're just a number. We all see that at times. We go in places, and churches are usually one that's great. You want the love and feeling of a small church, but then you want the outreach of the big church. It's kind of that getting those two to fit together is really challenging. I think a lot of that goes hand in hand in the business world too, is finding those right dynamics.
There's no telling how many plants or companies that we've interacted with over the last, 12, 13 years. We've been all over the country, been several parts of the world, and it doesn't take us long. I know it doesn't take me long to kind of figure out what kind of culture is at that plant or with that company, just from the attitude of the guys at the plant and the interaction of, maybe some higher management, and the and plant level guys or just whatever. One of our newer customers like communicate with their GM a whole lot, and he's one of those guys when he rolls up to the plant. I mean, he's cutting up with the yard guy, the truck drivers, anything. It's just like the GM clocks into the plant every day. That's how they interact, and the culture there is leaps and bounds over many, many other companies that we've had to deal with over the years. It makes an incredible difference.
Oh, exactly. I mean, and that's one of the keys too, is that you start looking at, with vendors, like with you guys. I mean, having people that are like-minded and, want to help and do good is always a good thing. I mean, there's some people in some places that just don't look at it that way. I mean, to me, I try to look at it kind of twofold. One, first and foremost, I want to see Thomas Concrete be uber successful because it means I'm successful, and then that's a good thing. But and the industry as a whole is a dynamic group, and it's a really, really good, good industry, and seeing the entire industry be successful also something that's really, really cool to see. And it's important to me. And that's why I try to stay involved with a lot of the industry groups and all that, just because I feel like that's what we need, and that's where we need to push things and drive forwards with.
Well, that actually launches us into one of the things I wanted to touch on. You were named maybe even almost a year ago now or more, the chairman of the NRMCA Research, Engineering, and Standards Committee. That's a super fancy title, but having you at the helm of something like that sounds pretty good to me. But could you tell us a little bit, like, what does that really entail? What are you looking to do, and what kind of time commitment does that take for you, of a guy who's really you got a lot on your plate?
Yeah, so it's surprisingly not overly time consuming. Colin Lobo and the staff over there at NRMCA do an amazing job doing the heavy lifting there. But yeah, it's definitely some time, especially when you get close to the meetings and everything, and as we're trying to do things here and there. But the time part's not there. No one should ever be scared to be involved with these committees, because is it a time commitment? Yes, but it's not so much that you can't manage it. And with it, I mean, it's good for the industry. I mean, those things were, 1L cement. I don't know if anyone's heard of it over the last couple of years. But, that committee's doing a lot of things to try to help, bridge that gap and show, that the ready mix industry and the, concrete contractors, that we're all trying to get to the same place, and we're just trying to do it different ways. So I think it's really big there. It's been fun. I'm kind of humbled to be the one they picked to do that, because there's some heavy hitters in
You
there.
know, it's funny you say that. I think I was actually in that subcommittee when they came up and they said, "Oh, you're gonna be the new chair." And I was looking around thinking the same thing. I was like, "Not that you're not awesome," but I was like, "There's a lot of people in here that I know, knowing you, that you're like these guys might be, a little above me, and I'm about to sit here and lead these
Yeah,
people."
yeah.
And that's no shot, because I really hold you in super high
No,
esteem. So I just
there's
want to be
there's
clear.
there's amazing people in there. Bobby Dowdy from
Yep.
UMC. I mean, he's vice chair now. Bobby's awesome. Eric Meisenheimer, who's with Chandler Cheney now. I mean, once again, another incredibly sharp guy. Terry Harris. I mean, another legend in the industry. There's so many people in that meeting that are that I use, for information, and like to bounce things off of and everything. So yeah, really humbling, super cool to get to do it, but it's kind of scary at the same time, because like, hey, I'm at the helm of this, so don't let it go off the tracks while I'm here.
Well, okay, so that leads me to something else I actually wanted to get into with you is uh, I don't know if it's when you're in the chair of a committee like this, or maybe it's specifically with Thomas, but as you're looking out, like, what kind of challenges are you seeing, like, today, right now? We really got to figure out how to solve XYZ. What is that you know screams at you when you wake up in the morning?
There's a real disconnect, I think, at times between multiple parts of the industry. I think we're a victim of losing a generation, as we see a lot of the John Cooks of the world and those guys retiring. There's a lot of knowledge that's disappearing, and with that, we're having other challenges. So now you've got less experience on that side. You've got less experience on the contractor side. The pumping companies don't have the experience they once had, and there's a lot of, I won't say untruths out there, but I mean there are. I mean there's things where people are trying to push their agenda their way, and then this side's trying to push this way. I think there's a good time now for some togetherness, for us all to realize, hey, we can solve a lot more together than we can as independent entities. And that's challenging, because everybody's got their own way of doing it. But the 1L that we talked about, that's kind of been the big hot button one there. But I think that's the tip of the iceberg. I think we're going to see more of that, and we're going to have to find ways to adapt to changing materials. Cements are going to change drastically probably over the next few years, but I mean, something that no one thinks about. We're looking at differences probably coming in aggregate sooner rather than later, because
Mm.
there's only so much of it. There's only so much aggregate that's in the earth, and at some point, things are going to start running out. I think there's parts of the country where there's already challenges with that. We fight it some in Europe, being a European-based company. They struggle with some of that, but I think there's going to be a need to tackle the recycled aggregate portion of this, and that's something, once again, where a company like you guys probably come in to play, because a product like the Acti-Gel probably helps bring some of those products into play a little bit quicker because they probably don't have to worry as much about getting the perfect gradation. Maybe you can use a little bit coarser material and things. So I think finding those solutions is going to be the challenge, and I think that's just working on it together. Good vendors, good ready mix guys, good concrete contractors, good pumping guys, and if we can all work on those things together, I think we can get through any of it. But I think that's going to be the biggest challenge is just the lack of, not necessarily the lack of, but the fear of losing so much experience and knowledge in the industries as a whole and figuring out how to bridge that gap.
Yeah, so well, let's touch on that one third. You mentioned the other two. So one being the recycled concrete aggregate potentially being important in the future. And it is true, there's products like ours and then others that could make it feasible to use more of that and take some of the downsides away. The one I just can't get over though is the water demand because you're putting in a porous aggregate,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't seen a mix where you could use more than like 10% RCA before your water demand just goes out into left field.
So much of that depends on the quality of that aggregate, and that aggregate quality depends on the quality of the concrete. So we're making a lot of these aggregates with leftover concrete that's been to a job site, comes back, you wet it up, you dump it on the ground. But we tested some probably 15 years ago that was from Hartsville Jackson. It was a runway they tore out, and they crushed it and turned it into it, and you could use it up to 70-80%. And even at 100%, you need a little bit more powder to overcome it, but you could use it around 75%, and it acted just like regular granite. I mean, it was amazing. But that small amount only goes so far. So I think so much of it's going to depend on where those products are coming from, what they were in before. And there's a lot of smart guys around. There's going to be somebody who figures out how to treat that aggregate.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, if we could treat it and seal it up, and
Yeah.
that porosity could be overcome, but that's of course more cost than doing it uniformly is a problem. And then you've got the other issue I remember seeing back in the day. Man, it's had to be like 10 years ago. They were using concrete that had been, it wasn't return concrete. It was like a demo. They demoed some sites and they had it and they crushed it and they got the rebar out of it and they had concrete left over to use. But some of that was 3,000 psi, some of it was 5,000 psi, some was 14,000 psi, and it was this whole mix of stuff, and it wasn't necessarily evenly mixed either.
Yeah.
And they like from one day to the next, you could be having what it felt like two different concrete plants running. It was pretty rough.
That's one that's tough. I mean, I've spoken to several aggregate guys over the years, and that's always been my thing to them. I can make anything work as long as you're consistent.
Mm-hmm.
The consistency level there is what's huge. And man, with some of these recycled aggregates, there is a huge lack of consistency before that. And then you get other stuff. I mean, a lot of times now you're seeing recycled concrete aggregate that have blocks, pieces of block in them, and that's a completely different world, and a different animal. Sometimes you see pieces of brick because, hey, it had mortar on it, so guys just don't know. And yeah, so that's going to be a challenge, and that's probably one of the biggest challenges we've got coming. But it's also kind of exciting because it's new, it's different, it's something to have to figure out, which is always fun for guys like us.
When you do these recycled aggregates, I don't know, maybe I cut out for a minute right there. So I don't know if y'all touched on this or not, but when you're using these recycled aggregates, are they more for coarse aggregates or they grind them even finer and use them for sand?
Yeah, they're doing both, but I think coarse aggregates where you've got the ability to be more impactful early. Once you get into a sand type deal, there's the finer material with that porosity, that surface area just kills you. I mean, it's really, really hard. But I mean, that doesn't mean that maybe someday you figure out how to get 10-15% of that in, but much more than that, it's probably going to be challenging.
I was curious because I didn't know, you were talking about bricks, cinder blocks, and all these other things that could be in the same pile. I didn't know if you ground them down more to a sand, that 2.8 or even a 3.0 sand, if that kind of alleviates some problems with all those different materials if they're more uniform in size.
It definitely does on the size part. The only thing that's scary there is you get like a piece of brick or a piece of block, they're so light that you start worrying about it trying to float out and having surface problems and things like that. So I think the key there is going to be to have it be true real concrete, not concrete type products, and I think that'll
Right.
help us out a lot. It's gonna be a big change coming there, I think.
Hmm.
So I think our audience here at the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast, I think they're pretty well tuned to the fact that we're about to lose a bunch of talent in the industry. The hundreds of thousands of years of knowledge that are going to be leaving in the next decade, and the backfilling of that is maybe what you're talking about is scaring folks. And I heard something super interesting the other day that I hadn't considered before. And it was a guy who was talking about AI. He was like at an AI summit, and he was talking about how he was trying to bring manufacturing back to the United States, and they had started this like 3 years ago. And he said, when I went around and looked at the factories here in the U.S. and then went overseas and looked at them, he's like, we're literally decades behind in technology for factories. And that the mindset here in the United States is actually, hey, the reason we lose out on price to China is because they're paying super low labor costs, and so we can't compete. And he said he went over there to look at it himself, and he's like, actually, there's hardly anybody in the factory. The whole thing's automated, and you got somebody sitting back there with a joystick controlling this thing. He's like, that's why you're losing on labor costs. There is no labor cost. He's like, but he found, he's like, you know what? It actually is more productive if every robot in the assembly line had its own supervisor, but that supervisor's not physically machining this part. The machine is machining the part. They're controlling the machine in some way, maybe very minimally controlling it, but they're supervising ready to bug. And so he was like, all right, we could build a factory like that. And so they went through a couple of iterations, and now they're up and running, and they've got it powered with AI. It's these unbelievable factories that are making parts for what they would call the primes in aerospace and defense. They're like your Boeings and guys like that. And as they're building this stuff, they need they need our hundreds, thousands of people to run the factories, and there are no people that are just like factory guys that they could just pull out of somewhere. So there are people grabbing people from hospitality, fast food restaurants, construction job sites, and they were able to train them up in minutes. And I mean, they were train them up very quickly because it was so automated. And people, he said, you know what? Because everything was running through these controllers and apps and computers, like he was amazed at how quickly people who we might not always give the benefit of the doubt as being smart and creative and come and able to figure things out, and they jumped right into it like a
Yeah.
duck to water, one after another. And that got me thinking about the concrete industry. Is there a time where instead of you thinking that the hatch system on the truck is maybe causing your driver to take his eye off these other elements, if instead we actually just push it a step further and we say, you know what, these batch plants, these concrete plants, these trucks, the way we deliver things, communicate with things, that it gets so advanced that we can take anybody. And we should be excited about the fact that it's so easy to train a guy up and to get them at a high level of proficiency that we can grab the kids out of high school. We can grab the guys who are tired of being finishers, and we can train them up super fast. Grab them any industry, hospitality, like in this factory example. We can grab them from anywhere and train them up. I don't know if you had any thoughts that have ever centered around that type of mindset.
No, I think that's where we're going to have to go. I think that, we're not going to be an overly appealing industry because we're out in the hot. We're dealing with dirty. It's not going to. You're not going to see a lot of ads with people going, "Man, that looks like a really fun job," because it is. But you got to get past all the stigmas up front. But no, I think that's it. I think you're going to get to a point at some point in time where you've got a lead driver that's going to work, and it may be we may be talking about autonomous trucks, to where you have a guy who goes out with the first truck, and there's just a steady stream of trucks, and he manages to pour. He's making sure slump and all that's right when it gets there, and he's just kind of getting things back and forth. And I think AI, machine learning, has a lot of place in our plants. I think the challenge to that is that average age of a concrete plant might scare a lot of people. There's not a lot of brand new plants out there, but I think those are the things, as we try to dial plants in to be more accurate and everything. I think that's where AI and machine learning can help that process a ton. And then you don't need the super experienced batch man because the plant's not overweighing and it's not having turn heads get hung or things like that because the equipment itself is learning how to handle it. And I think those are things that we've got to embrace and we've got to get to. There's a lot of smart people in the world, and I mean that's the thing about it. They've created AI now. So what does that mean for coders? Because as we've got AI, do you need all these guys out there coding things? Because you're going to see the AI be able to do a ton of that work on its own. So I think embracing it, figuring out how to make it fit is going to be paramount for us to be successful in the future. It's just figuring out what makes the most sense and where.
In the last couple of episodes, we've talked about and heard about the amount of older folks leaving the industry and how, Paul, would you say hundreds of thousands of years worth of knowledge they're leaving the industry? I got to thinking about it the other day. Is like, we've still got a lot of smart people in this industry. A lot of folks in their 40s and 50s. We got Justin here, and just a handful of guys that we know. Ryan Betts, Scott Kelly, some of these legendary people in some of these regions of the country. I'm not discrediting the folks that are retiring, but I think we're going to be okay because we've got some super smart people still in the industry. And I think so long as we keep recruiting and we keep feeding this pool of knowledge that we've got, it's still sad to see people leave the industry because of the impact that they had in their own way. But I don't think we should be afraid, and maybe nobody is, but I don't think we should be afraid of what we're losing, and more, be thankful for what we had and what we can continue to grow.
Yeah, I think we're all in that position now to where, as we get deeper into our careers, we've got to be willing to do what those guys did for us. I think there's been a big misconception at times where some people don't want to teach people how to do things because, like, oh God, if I teach him how to do that, he can take my job. I've always been of the mindset if he can do my job, then my job's really easy because they're able to do a lot. So yeah, I mean, we've got to make sure. Down here in the southeast, there's a bunch of really smart guys that have retired, but there's still a lot of really smart guys that are in the markets. And John Cook disappearing, Gary Knight, some of those guys like that. But I mean, we've still got the guys you just talked about. Scott Kelly, Lee Thrasher's still down here. We've still got Rick Tilson. I mean, there's a lot of really sharp, really strong people out there throughout the country, and we just got to make sure that as we become that group, that's the leadership kind of piece. As we become kind of I hate to say the older group, I mean, but we're getting there. We've got to make sure that we're teaching that next group and making sure that they're ready to do what they need to, because that's going to be a huge, huge piece of what we've got to do, and that's where legacies are built. I mean, man, it's tough. I mean, there's days where I really wonder, was I smart, following in behind someone like John Cook, because those are huge shoes to fill. But then everybody's like, hey, how's it going? How's the new deal? And it's like, man, this is really easy because John had me so prepared to do it that it hasn't been incredibly hard. There's days where it's like, man, this is insane. Why did I do this? But there's others where it's like, man, this is just normal and easy. And that's a good sign to know, to where you feel comfortable doing it instead of panicked.
I think Joey and I ask ourselves that once a year at least. Like, why am I doing
I'm
this?
once a week, so
What kind of fantasy world are you living in, Paul?
Which usually when I'm flying over Africa.
So a lot of good thoughts go through your mind, at 50,000, 10 hours in an airplane. There's plenty of time for self-reflect and a lot of contemplation there.
Lots of lots of contemplation there. Yeah, you bring up Gary Knight. I hadn't thought of him probably in about a year. I'm ashamed to admit. I think the last time he sent like a mass text message that he was on a sailboat out in the middle of nowhere and was just wishing everybody well. But that was Gary. Just couldn't have been a better guy. He was in the Atlanta area, worked for Lehigh Cement. For those who don't know him, I don't know how anybody could know him. He was known by everybody and loved by everybody, and that's a really rare combination of a guy.
Yeah, great guy. We used to tell him he should write a book, because if you were at a ACI or ASTM or any type of industry event, Gary was the go-to guy to tell you where to go have dinner. And he would tell you the most off-the-wall places, but it would be some of the most amazing meals you would ever have. I mean, I'll never forget going to a restaurant in Anaheim, California, and we went into an industrial area and we walked into what was like a warehouse, and it's like one of the best steaks I've ever had in my life. I mean, it's like you would have no one would have ever went there unless you were with Gary Knight.
That's awesome. We need to have, all right, new idea for like another podcast for to add 10 After Dark series is like best places you've been to eat around the country while doing this
Uh,
job. And, we got a new number one at the top of our list, Joey and I both. We were just at a job in New Mexico with a mining company, but this mine is out in the middle of nowhere. It's 4 hours in any direction to a major airport. So the one that we chose flying out of was El Paso, Texas. So on the way from the middle of nowhere, New Mexico to El Paso, you pass through the town of Las Cruces, and just as you're getting into Cruces, there is a taco joint, and it's hard to put into words like how good this tiny little brick building, and it was tiny. I mean, tiny little bit brick building was absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Joey, do you remember? Joey, you remember the name of the place? Now I'm talking about it. We should give it a shout out.
El Vagon,
Yeah, the wagon
the
in
wagon.
Spanish. Yeah, El Vagon. Anybody, you're in Las Cruces, you're driving through, unbelievable. It'll change your life.
Yeah, it's crazy how food will do that to you too. It's kind of an interesting one, but I remember as a kid we drove to San Antonio to visit some of my mom's friends. We stopped just outside of Houston, a little town called Winnie, Texas, and we ate at a place called Alti's Cajun Cuisine, and it was amazing. I mean, just one of the best meals. I mean, I don't know if we were just that hungry, if it was really that good, but it's like middle of nowhere, suburb of Houston. Never thought anything about it. Well, fast forward, 6, 7 years later, and I meet my wife, and I'm dating her, and meet dealing with her parents and everything, and they're from Texas. They're from Texas City, down near the coast and everything, and we're talking. They're like, "Hey, have you ever been to Texas?" Like, yeah. Well, I went to San Antonio, and I'm like, "Hey, we stopped at a place just outside of Houston, in a place called Winnie, Texas." And her dad looks at me and goes, "Alties," and I'm like, "How do you know where that is?" He's like, "Everyone knows where that is," and I'm like, "Holy cow, this is insane!" So there's someone who knows where that restaurant is in Las Cruces. They're like, "How are these guys just finding out about this?"
Yeah. You travel enough though, like you have like I can remember a restaurant from several, cities that we've been to, Boston, Austin and Atlanta, Birmingham,
Chicago. I'll never
Kansas City.
forget
Yeah, I
a
mean, you
deep
name
dish
it.
pizza I had in Chicago. It was one of the most incredible meals. I mean, I
Yeah.
was only able to eat a third of it. It was
Mm-hmm.
like a brick in my stomach, but God, it was good.
Yeah, I
But like
mean,
every, as many places as we've been to, whenever somebody says, "Hey, I'm going to XYZ town," more often than not, we've been there because
yeah,
we've been to I've been to 49 states now, and more often than not, we've probably been through there, at least been through the airport or something, and we probably tell you like where's a half decent place to eat in whatever city you're in.
yeah. Tell you where not to eat too, though.
Yeah. Yep.
But hey, I got to circle back to something you said. We got to be real careful on this show. You said something nice about Lee Thrasher. Did I hear that correctly?
I did. I mean, I played
Yeah.
golf with Lee at GRMCA. That was a fun experience. I'm not sure Lee remembers the end of the round, but no, we had a great time. Lee and I go way back, and funny story. Lee, early on in his career, was actually a field tech for my dad when my dad was running a plant for Ready Mix USA. So small world. It's kind of you start crossing paths, and it's always good. I mean, it's really nice for some of those guys now. I mean, me and Lee always got along great. Communicated a lot. Same with Rick Tilson and those guys too. But with Lee being with a vendor instead of with the competitor is always nice now to really be able to pick his brain, talk shop. Hey, what do you think about this? So Lee's a great one. Even if he does wear a lot of that ugly orange, we'll forgive him for that.
We can't forgive the shoes, and we love Lee. So, but those shoes he wore last year, my God.
Couldn't miss
He is,
him.
yeah, Lee's been a godsend for me though, because with GRMCA, as we got Bill in there and he kind of took things to another level. We got the technical committee back going. We decided to introduce the CTAC program, trying to help with the testing lab, get that piece of the puzzle figured out. It's the one thing I don't know that we ever figure out, but if we can get those people engaged and more involved, I think it's good. But Lee's really grabbed hold of that and kind of taken the ownership of it, which is good because Lee's been in the ready mix side, Now here he is on the vendor side, and he's got a really good, strong enough background to be able to have conversations with the ready mix guys and the testing labs to help hopefully get that stuff straightened out a little bit.
Yeah, we love Lee. He's salt of the earth. So I always joking about, but those shoes were horrendous, Lee.
Yeah,
I'm
this
sorry.
he got.
He's gonna hear this, and I'll tell him to his face.
You got. I guarantee he got those shoes on sale.
Oh my gosh, I do.
If
I
he
really hope the
if he
component
bought them if he
series
bought
works
them
out for him too.
if he bought them before Josh Heupel was coach, then he probably got them at a real big discount.
Probably so.
Yeah, he just reached out the other day. It's magnet season, so everybody go get your magnets from Lee. It's interesting though about you talking about the testing labs. Could you? We got just a few more minutes with you here. Could you expand on what you meant by that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's one there. I don't think it's any secret in the industry, but for as good as the testing labs are, and for as hard of workers as much effort as they put in, the initial curing phase of the cylinder is the most critical piece to that puzzle, and it's the one thing that never seems to happen right. And as a ready mix guy, it's kind of always a struggle because we get the black eye from a low break, and the testing lab, 90% of the time they're not at fault. They're victim of circumstance. But how do we get that fixed? As you look at all your ACI standards and everything, it is the responsibility of the testing labs, and they go back and forth. Some of them be like, hey, well, you know, we don't quote that we're handling the curing because then we're quoting too high. And I'm like, yeah, but you're quoting to meet a standard. You're not quoting, and this is one thing, it's a pet peeve of mine. If you ever look at a break report and it says in general accordance with, that's just a good way of saying I didn't do my job. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's not a good thing. And the competitive pressures and all that I understand, but that's a struggle, and it's been a struggle for a long time. So we've looked at it differently. So CTAC gives us the data, so we're able to look at it and see kind of what's happening, what's not happening, and we're trying to help bridge that gap. We're building some good conversations with large contractors and everything, so that people realize, hey, here's what needs to happen, and here are the things that are out there. And we've really engaged those testing labs and brought them into as well, because we want to be their partner. We want them to be successful, because if if I'm shipping good quality concrete and they're doing the test the proper way and they're able to cure them properly, we get good results. Life is good for everybody. And the sustainability piece there is what people lose, because I have to over design to overcome that. You eliminate that over design, and now we're really cooking with some grease to get the sustainability things going forward.
Well, it's interesting because that's a problem everywhere. Actually, that's not a Georgia problem.
No, it's
And
everywhere.
it's everywhere. And I just wanted to make sure I was hearing you right. It is that the people who are doing the on-site testing want to make sure that everybody's doing it exactly right. I talk about another job that's hard to recruit for and find the best people and retain those people. I mean, that's another one that's tough. Well, here's what I wondered. I don't know anybody. Maybe this has happened and I don't know everything, but maybe this happened. But Joey and I have been in a lot of places and I haven't seen this. Nobody seems to vertically integrate. Is it against the rules for Thomas to own the testing company? Because if you did, the incentive for would be to make sure that guy's doing it the right way, and then you can send it. Maybe you guys doing all the quality work on site, and then you hand it off to somebody else to do the breaks potentially.
Yeah.
But if it was vertically integrated in that way, I think it actually solves a ton of this problem.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right there. The only negative there is a lot of engineers typically frown on that. It's not that it's illegal or anything like that. It's just they typically want it to be third party. We run into that even with shrinkage testing and things like that. But can you do them yourself? Absolutely. But a lot of times they want to see it come from a third party or be stamped by PE or whatever.
But even if the brakes themselves were stamped by somebody else, if you employed the person who was napping in their truck between, I'm sorry, sitting in their truck between the times that they're filling that wheelbarrow to run the air pot and slump and make the cylinders, if you employed that person and had that person be responsible for getting the concrete data and the samples to the testing lab to do their brakes or whatever other tests are being done, would that be, I wonder if that's enough of arm's length that it would satisfy the engineers.
it's definitely possible. I mean, it's probably one there that as things go forward, time goes forwards, that it's probably something that has to be discussed. Talk with some of the groups. Hey, is this something? What does this model look like? With
Yeah, I mean, because if they're not going to hold the guy accountable who's running those tests,
right,
I know you will. I know you'll be up his
absolutely.
rear end and make darn sure he's doing it right.
But it's a broken process that at some point we've got to find a way to make it better. I mean, those guys really, I've got a lot of friends in the testing lab world, and they do a really good job. I mean, they work hard. They're all trying to do things really really well, and they're just the competitive environment and all that seems to be a struggle there. And that's one of the things I've always kind of pushed on with friends in the structural engineering side. It's like, hey guys, if I send you a mix design that doesn't meet your spec, what happens? And they're like, oh, well, you're rejected. I'm like, okay, well, then why are you not enforcing your specification on the testing side? Because it's there. It says that you've got to do X, Y, and Z, and tells you by which things it's like. But then you get a break report that says in general accordance, and that's okay. So at some point we've got to figure out how to bridge that gap. And I think we're getting there. I mean, it's Bill Benzer, he's been really passionate about that with GRMCA. He's the right guy for it because he's so even keeled and everything. So he doesn't get overly excited like some of us do with that at times. But yeah, he's really grabbed onto that, is really pushing for it, and then Lee's jumped in there. I mean, those two are a pretty dynamic duo. We're having, I won't tell you we're fixing the problem, but we're having some success and we're getting some people's attention and having good conversations, and that's a start. If we get people talking about it, that'll help get it to start moving forwards.
I'm gonna pull that in general accordance line with my wife one day and just see if it works. If I did something exactly the way that she told me how to do it, and I'm gonna say, well, I did it in general accordance with my process, and just see if that flies, and I'll let y'all know how that goes.
Yeah. We'll see the evidence of that.
There will be signs.
In general accordance with our marriage vows. Man, that is hilarious. A couple years ago, when there was a big fire under an overpass and the interstate melted in Atlanta, were you the guys that went out there and fixed that?
That was us. That was
Yeah. I gotta please. I don't know this. I don't know the story behind it. I just remember that it was you guys, and that was a mess, and everybody was, clapping when it was over. But I don't know like the actual story of what went down there. And I imagine you were right in the middle of it.
man. So it's a crazy one. So at that time they were storing a bunch of pipe, basically conduit type stuff up under a bridge there, and in typical fashion, the degenerate started a fire in a buggy and pushed the buggy into the area, and it caught all of that on fire. And I mean, it was, all of us were getting home for today. I mean, it's like 6 o'clock in the evening. A lot of us were just getting home from a long day and all that. And man, it was all over the news, and bridge collapsed. And the next morning, the phones were ringing. Phones were ringing that night actually, but the next morning it's hey, we need to start having meetings. And it was, man, we were in a weird spot at the time. My daughter was really really sick. She actually had mono and Epstein-Barr at the same time. Very similar type thing, and like so it had her really. So we were dealing with that. So we're trying to have meetings, and I'm trying to deal with it. So stress level was pinged at that moment. But John Cook went to a meeting with GDOT and CW Matthews, who did the work on it, and had a meeting. They kind of came up with a plan, and then John went on vacation, and it was our job to execute. So we got going. Typically, that's about an 18-month bridge to build. I think we did it. I almost screwed these days up. I believe it was 58 days from when it fell to when it was back up. Man, we worked around the clock. It was rough. I mean, the first pour, we were doing the columns. Tommy McElroy, we talked about another guy who just recently retired, great friend of mine, another good mentor. Tommy and I were there for the pour. The pour was supposed to be at 5 a.m. that morning. 5 a.m. the next morning, we poured it. And yeah, so long day there.
Oh my gosh.
18 yards, we do it, and we drive home. We get home, and
Yeah.
I take a nap, get up, go to my son's baseball game, get up, as I'm coming home from it, the phone starts ringing, and they're calling. They're like, "Hey, your brakes are low." And I'm like, You mean my brakes are low? These are supposed to be 24-hour brakes. This has been on the ground 4 hours. Yeah. We need that. And it's like, hold on, time out. Where did this? So, in the midst of this, you can't get anywhere because, it's the main thoroughfare. You can't get anywhere. So I get back in the car. I'm going back up there. We get there and got somebody to get our cylinders we had made. And those cylinders actually made decent strength. They were a lot better than the 4-hour cylinders because they were about 10 hours old then. And we had a meeting and everybody got on the same page but everything worked really, really well. I mean, you talk about teamwork and people doing all the right things. Man, it was seamless. Tommy McElroy from our team on the technical side did a lot of the heavy lifting with that. Rick Dumont, who was one of our
Well, yeah, Rick. Man, I hadn't heard Rick Dumont's
yeah,
name in a
I mean,
while.
another legend in the industry there.
Yep. Yep.
Rick Ramrod it. Matt Finch, who was running our Buckhead plant, who's still running our Buckhead plant. Great plant manager. That team did a lot of the heavy lifting. I mean, they were 24 hours a day. We're working in shifts. There's a couple of us trying to handle everything else while those guys were doing it. But, CW Matthews' team was great. Things went really, really well. Pretty seamless. To my knowledge, it's been a lot of years now. I don't think we had any rejected loads or any low breaks or anything on the entire deal. It's kind of cool. Secretary Cho, that was the transportation secretary then, actually reached out to us because they're like, hey, this is what we need to start looking at for how to build things because the efficiencies are so much better and being able to do things faster, which is a big deal because, that's, if you live in the South, you know this pretty well. Every DOT project we do, by the time we finish it, we start over. So everything's always under construction. I don't think they've ever finished I-20 going to Birmingham.
I was just about to say I-20 to Birmingham. It's a money laundering scheme, is what that is.
Yeah, I mean, it's just perfect scenario to show people what is possible when everybody gets together and you kind of cut some of the red tape and just do good things that work and good successful project. We've got a laundry list of those. I mean, too many to count. It's kind of cool when you ride around town and you point stuff out to your kids. Hey, we did that. Hey, we built this. We did this over here, and the people and the stories and the fun that went with them. I say there was fun. There's some headaches in there too, but there's definitely a lot of fun times with that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I do. I'm glad to hear that you got the recognition on that from some higher up folks in the world. Because I tell you what, there's a bridge in Baltimore that got crashed into a long time ago, and they hadn't even poured a column for it. So I don't know. They probably should be giving you a call and helping you get that dang bridge put back together.
It's too cold up there for me.
It's Baltimore. It's not. Hey, I tell you what. To give a little bit of defense to the Mid Atlantic, go to Baltimore in the middle of the summer and see if you don't think you're sitting in Atlanta. It's the humidity there's a lot. It's surprising. I had no idea it was going to be that bad. It's surprising how humid it is in the city of Baltimore.
Someone might could twist my arm though, because I love the waterfowl hunt, so I'm sure there's some sea ducks up there in some of those bays we could get on pretty good.
Are you coming up to ACI?
Planning to. Yep, planning to.
Yeah, it's in Baltimore. Next one's in Baltimore, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I should be there too. So we'll at least get to see the city together. Is there between then and Concrete Works? Dang, I might see you twice this year. Anything else? Anything else you got going on? You want the people to know about that's happening in your world?
No, exciting times. I mean, it's kind of the same thing it's always been. Trying to find concrete solutions for people. If you need concrete, we'll be happy to give you anything you want over here at Thomas Concrete.
Hey, you better be careful saying that. People don't realize how literal you are. You'll do a little you'll try anything once.
Exactly. I've always told people, if you can dream it, we can figure out how to do it. The problem with that is I had to put a caveat on there. Sometimes we can figure out how to do it. I'm just not sure they can figure out how to pay for
it. That's great. Joe, you got anything else for Justin before we let him get back to his real job?
Well, just the one question. We haven't asked this question in a while because we had a bunch of AI folks on here. Justin, if you can think of one right quick, what's the craziest thing you've seen on a job site?
Ooh, that's a tough one. So probably one of the crazier things I guess I've ever seen on the job site, is, man, there's too many to count here.
We'll just assume statute of limitations, number one, and then number two. I think we got a couple crazy ones. The craziest story we've gotten so far was they saw a naked man from the mental hospital next door ran out onto the job site. So that was pretty crazy.
So I'll share one that's not necessarily a job site, but very similar. So John Cook and I went to do a lunch and learn for Uzen and Case, big structural engineer in Atlanta, and we're on the 30 some odd floor of this building when the alarms start going off because there's an active shooter. So everybody, we go through our deal. We can see out the window. It's not in this building, but we can see out the window, police cars and everything. Well, as we go to leave, they won't let us leave. And we're like, okay, so we're sitting in the lobby of the building. There's a SWAT team actively in here. And, it's like, holy cow, what is going on here? And like, we sit in this lobby for an hour, hour and a half. And, if Atlanta traffic, it's getting to be time that we need to get moving. And, so finally, we see a guy come through and we're like, hey man, when do you think things are going to be good that we can get out of here? And he's like, yeah, you guys can leave now, but hey, double check your car and make sure no one's in it before you get in it. And we're like, so here we are walking out, and we're like, man, is he being for real or was he? But yeah, here you are unlocking the car and looking in the back seat and making sure that everything was good there. We used to have a guy that worked with us named Jimmy Gilbert. Jimmy was spastic to say the least. You didn't give him a marker because if he was going to write on something that was going to be wrong. And
oh my gosh,
we were on a job site one night and Jimmy was losing his mind because things were, big 1,200 yard slab pour. He pulls up, he's losing it. He's trying to get things figured out. He goes over and he's trying to get in my truck because our trucks looked identical at the time. So he's trying to get in my truck to drive off. And then he goes and parks his truck somewhere else. 3 or 4 hours later, he can't find his truck because someone, we shall remain nameless, may have moved his truck to the complete other side of the job site because it was sitting there running. But, just good fun times with that, things that, at the time, people don't realize with this industry, it's a tough industry. There's a lot of hard work and a lot of that goes on. But man, the people and all that make this really, really, really fun. Being able to, the camaraderie's out of this world, talking with some of the guys who have retired over the last little while or going on to do different things. That's the one thing they all miss is the people.
My favorite part of that entire spiel was that people were willing to risk their life to beat Atlanta traffic.
Hey, it's a real problem here. I mean,
that should tell you something right there.
There's a reason they got that bridge built in 58 days because traffic's bad enough. You just lost a main artery of the city. I can't even imagine.
My commute when that bridge was out, so my normal commute. So if there is no traffic, it's about an hour and 15 minutes for me.
Where are you coming from?
So I'm south of town. I'm down in Williams. So if I go through town, I mean, it's 67 miles from my house to my lab. But, it's an hour and 15 minutes with no traffic. Hour and a half, hour 45 is pretty typical. When that happened, there were days where it would take me 4 hours to get home.
Wow.
I mean, just taking all that and pushing it off on the other stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Was insane. So,
well, the
only place I've seen worse traffic than here is LA. I mean, I spent several hours on the 5 one time, and that's enough for me. I mean, it was rough. So yeah, Atlanta traffic is it's a different animal.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, it doesn't matter where you go in the world, they all have 5 o'clock traffic. Everybody's got it. That was one of the things that kind of threw me off. The best 5 o'clock traffic, if there is an award for such a horrible thing, Sydney, Australia. I say, well, why was it? What made it not so bad? They had cameras like what felt like every 10 feet because you're in a car and you're going 60 miles an hour, and if you went less than 55 miles an hour, you got a ticket, and if you went more than 62, you got a ticket. And so everybody was humming along at the exact same speed all the time. So it was crazy. It was crazy. And it was so smooth. And the interstates were built purposefully. And so it was like, it wasn't like you built a city and then you added a million people.
Yeah.
After you built the city. So you're building all these other thoroughfares. It was all it was planned a little better. That was pretty cool. But yeah, Atlanta actually might be the worst. I've been in LA traffic. DC was really bad, but you're not supposed to drive in DC. You're supposed to take the metro. And New York City was pretty horrible. And again, they don't want you to drive, so they might be doing it on purpose.
It's one there. I mean, it's kind of strange, but if you wanted to have a hit podcast, if this gig don't work for you guys, things you see in Atlanta traffic would probably be a pretty good podcast. Because
they probably got an Instagram account.
Yeah, you
that.
probably do. We got one for Philly. It's WTW of Philadelphia, and that's basically what it is the whole worst things from the word. Jacksonville's the worst, though. Actually, like physically worst thing I saw. Saw dead bodies laying on the ground in Jacksonville. But
Yeah,
what are you gonna do? It's Florida.
yeah, it's a different animal there too.
All right, man. Hey, we appreciate all your time today. It's really great catching up with you, man. You've been a good friend for a long time. Really love what you're doing over there, and we look forward to seeing you here in a couple months.
Yep, appreciate it, guys.
All right, man. Bye.